Hello there everybody, welcome to this week's edition of The Verdict. So there's been some tremendous racing over the last 7 days and we've picked out 6 races which I'm sure you'll find of particular interest, and one horse in particular really caught my imagination, and that is the horse that we are going to start with at Leicester earlier this week on Monday evening. The horse was Shining Blue, who went off the odds-on favourite 6-5 on his debut for Saeed bin Saror. Second in was Dukedom at 9-2, and it was the favourite who was wildly impressive in this heat. He jumped out of stall number 3 and tanked throughout the race. From 5, Dukedom was second, and the third horse home was Doug Esprit, who jumped out of stall number 4. This is how the race unfolded, and it was oh so easy for the winner. He was hugely impressive here, but not just visually impressive. The numbers back up what he achieved here. Now, over 7 furlongs at Leicester, they run downhill early on, so obviously you'd expect the sectionals to be quite quick, and they certainly were, dipping well under 12 seconds as they came down the hill. But when the pace picked up going up the hill, this horse fired in 2 really quick furlongs, 11.34 and 11.61. And he absolutely annihilates his rivals. He wins 2.5 lengths, but he could have won by double that. There's absolutely no doubt. And Danny Tudhope was almost motionless throughout the race. There he is over on the far side in the Godolphin blue, travelling really strongly. Here's Dukedom in Her Majesty the Queen's colours, who finished in second place, but he was beaten hollow by this horse, who I think is going to make up into easily a pattern race performer. And just perhaps he could be a Group 1 horse in the making. Remember Baid? He made his debut here at Leicester and he was very impressive when he did that. Well, this horse is very impressive here. Obviously the bare form is nothing to write home about, but look how he does it. The 5th and 6th furlongs, 11.34, 11.61, without coming off the bridle, and he sauntered home just over 12 seconds for the final furlong. But he was eased down by Danny Tudhope close home. There he goes, pricking his ears, and he took a while to pull up as well. I'm sure you'll agree, it was hugely impressive. We look at his pedigree to try and think what would be right for him going forward. He's by Exceed and Excel out of an elusive quality mare. That says to me fast ground. Exceed and Excels really like to hear the hooves rattle. They like decent ground. They go well on the all-weather as well. They go particularly well at Ascot. And could he just be an Ascot horse? That straight track at Ascot might suit him very well. I can imagine him running in a high-end handicap, held up in a strongly run handicap, and winning one of those, and perhaps even winning a group race in the near future. I was hugely impressed with him. There's one little caveat, and I think it's worth mentioning. He's a 4-year-old making his debut, so clearly he's had problems. They haven't been able to get him to the track until now. He's very big. It might just be that he's taken a while to come to himself, but he might be fragile as well. So they may just tread softly with him for the time being. But look at him there. He's hardly doing a tap. He's got tons left. Look at his movement. He doesn't curl his knee at all. That backs up his pedigree that says he wants fast ground. He throws his leg out straight in front of him. He's always going to want decent ground, but he is a very, very exciting prospect. It'll be hard to better what we saw at Leicester from Shining Blue, but we're going to look at another very good performance from early last week at Ayr in a listed contest, and it came from My Astra for the very much in form William Haggis team. Tom Marquand was the man on board. This was the Rothsay Stakes. It was over 10 furlongs, and My Astra was the 13-8 favourite. Achilles was 15-8, Angel Power was 9-2, and it was 11-2, and bigger the rest. Let's see how this race unfolded then. My Astra, wildly impressive to the eye, but this was an interesting race as far as the numbers were concerned, for it was quite steadily run. They didn't go mad early on. The finishing speed percentage was 108.3, telling us that the winning filly came home 8.3% quicker through the final 3 furlongs than she ran the rest of the race. In essence, she quickened up in really good style off quite a steady gallop. She had a nice sit early on. Here she is, buried in there, sat there tracking this steady pace. The Blue Brilliant was second, and Angel Power, who's just in front of her at this stage, was back in 3rd place. And the thing that was most impressive about this was the turn of foot that she was able to display. It looked visually impressive and the numbers are pretty good. A final 3 furlongs was 36.97, so just over even 12s through those final 3 furlongs. And that is where the pace picked up. Until then, it was all pretty pedestrian. But whenever a horse manages to win a listed race by as far as she did, you've just got to sit up and take notice, and she won here by 12 lengths, and she holds a Group 1 entry going forward. She's in the Pretty Polly at the Curragh. So she's progressive, interesting filly going forward for a very much in-form yard. The clock doesn't quite back up the visuals entirely. You'd have liked her to have fired some sub-12 furlongs and really surged away from them, but nonetheless, she couldn't have done more than she did here in quickening up well. Just niggled along there, didn't handle the bend particularly well. Kiloise under pressure in behind. She brings a good level of form to the party. I can't help but think that some of these horses underperformed here, perhaps because of the ground, which was rated as soft, good to soft in places. But don't let that put you off the winner, because she has won on decent ground in the past as well. She's won on ground officially described as good to firm, but she handled the soft here fine. She's the last off the bridle, and now when Tom McCann says go between the 2 and the 1, she quickens up very well indeed. The others are stopping, I think, in front of them, in front of her. If you look at the figures, the sections that they come home in are very slow indeed, and she's way too good for them, finishing off, as I said, just a shade quicker than 8% faster than she ran the rest of the race. It is possible that a slowly run race didn't suit the others in behind, but it certainly didn't bother My Astra, whose turn of foot was most impressive, and the yard could not be in better form. William Haggis is absolutely flying at the moment, and this is definitely a filly to put in your racing TV tracker. There's nothing to take out from in behind, I don't think. They were merely plodding according to the numbers. The Blue Brilliant and Angel Power, who'd always been prominent, they just didn't have the change of gear that the winner had. My little caveat with this performance is that it's very, very impressive visually, but maybe she's got to prove she can do just that in a strongly run race. Now, she might well be able to do it, but that is for her yet to prove, and it's going to be tougher for her to reproduce this against better company. But for now, she's a bright, bright prospect with a sharp turn of foot. She stays 10 furlongs. She might even get a little bit further, but I think 10 is probably her bag at the moment, and that turn of foot will always put her in with a chance in decent races, which is where she'll be heading now. She might well be a Group 1 filly in the making. Well, we've just seen an impressive William Haggis winner at Ayr earlier in the week, and now we'll go to the Coral Heron Stakes. Took place at Sandown, and we're going to find William Haggis bagging another race with My Prospero, who went off the 7-4 joint favourite with Reach for the Moon, and Akko Najla 11-4 next in. They went a mile here, and My Prospero was quite impressive in the end. Stall 1 he came out of. The second horse was Reach for the Moon, coming back. Actually, the Queen's horse was thought to be a Derby prospect before sustaining an injury on the gallops, and this was his first run back since. And Akko Najla was back in 3rd place. Send him on the way here, and the first thing to note is that Frankie Dettori got all his own way out in front on Reach for the Moon. Actually, the Queen's colours, those red sleeves, and he is dawdling along in front. It was a very, very steady pace here, and then it turned into a 3 furlong dash, which was won by My Prospero, who's a little bit keen in behind. He's just got a bit of cover under Tom Marquand there, and a nice sit behind Frankie, who gives the runner-up a beautiful ride in defeat. It's a really good ride because he's just dictated his own fractions out in front, and he was going through furlongs in 13.29 4 furlongs out, but then he quickened it up markedly, and they went from a 13.29 furlong immediately to an 11.51. That's when Frankie quickened from the 4 to the 3. That was a massive change of gear, and it almost caught My Prospero out. He's about 3 lengths down on Dettori, who's getting the run of the race, and Dettori will quicken first, and My Prospero's just left a little bit one-paced, a bit outpaced. At this stage, now Frankie's going, and he's away and gone, and Tom Marquand's getting quite serious. He's pulled his whip through to the right hand, given My Prospero a crack, and you'd think Dettori's nicked it here, but My Prospero digs really deep and fires a final 3 furlongs of 35.92 seconds. a sixth furlong of 11.2 to run down the well-ridden Reach for the Moon, who, to his credit, battles and rallies all the way to the line. And My Prospero had to work very hard indeed to get the better of Reach for the Moon. A perfect reintroduction for Reach for the Moon, in that he's probably not had too hard a race given the early pace that they went, and he'll probably take a big step forward from this now. What of the winner? Well, I think he's highly thought of. He's entered in the St James's Palace Stakes, so it'd be interesting to see whether they decide to go that route with him. He's overcome a bias here, positional bias. The Tory had the run of the race, perhaps should have won really. Perhaps that horse just needed it, Reach for the Moon, and that allowed My Prospero to run him down. An interesting point about some of those in behind. Aku Najla and One for the Gutter, they quickened as well as the winner through the sixth furlong. Their sectionals were almost identical, but they couldn't go on after that. Sprinting for that one furlong meant that they had nothing more for the finish, whereas My Prospero could maintain the momentum to get past Reach for the Moon and run out a ready enough winner in the end. William Haggis, well, we mentioned him in the context of My Astra winning up at Ayr. Well, he's had 51 winners this season from 163 runners, and that is a 31% strike rate for William Haggis. He could not be in better form. This week that we are reviewing now really does belong to the William Haggis team. Loads of winners, including the German 2000 Guineas winner as well. And this fella, My Prospero, who won a steadily run Heron Stakes, outpaced 3 out, but knuckled down and got the job done. Better things await. Well, if Frankie Dettori was somewhat frustrated after what happened with Reach for the Moon in the Heron Stakes, where he gave the horse a brilliant ride in defeat, well, he tasted exactly the same fate when it came to the Cocked Hat Stakes at Goodwood. This was how they bet for this Derby trial, in effect. And at the head of the market, Aldous Huxley 7-4, Frankie on board, Lysander 3-1, Maxud 9-2, Natural World 11-2, Lionel 17-2, Mr. Allen a 20-1 shot. So the Reach for the Moon Heron Stakes was a very steadily run affair. Well, we've got exactly the same here. And if you look at the numbers, this was even slower in the early stages than the Heron Stakes. They absolutely crawled. And yes, it was Frankie Dettori who set out to try and dictate matters once again. He went straight to the front here, and Aldous Huxley in hand with others in behind, quite keen in the early part of the race, visually telling us how steadily they went. We need confirmation of that, and we get it from the finishing speed percentage. 110.49. Winners come home 10.49% quicker than he ran the rest of the race. He's really come home strongly, Lionel, who's held up by Jamie Spencer at this stage. He's out the back here. He's at a massive positional disadvantage. He wins, and Aldous Huxley's there, who's got the run of the race under Frankie. Everything going right for Frankie, just like it was with Reach for the Moon, apart from the fact that once again he doesn't manage to win. And I think we have to say that Lionel did very well to win from the position that he was in a really steadily run race. He quickened up pretty well to reel in Aldous Huxley, who looked all over the winner from the 2-pole to the 1-pole. Frankie, look, he took a pull there going down the hill. He's got some of them keen in behind. Natural World pulling. Then the Godolphin Blue, a couple of others very keen as well. Lionel's nicely settled, however, under Jamie Spencer. But Frankie's got it all his own way here. The winner's best furlong was the 10th furlong here. He came home pretty well. 11.81 was his best furlong in this race, and that allowed him to run down Aldous Huxley. And I think you've got to say that he's miles better than the bare result, Lionel. He's got to be a fair bit better, and they might just pitch him in quite deep next time. Maybe Irish Derby. He's in the King Edward VII Stakes as well. Now he's under pressure here from Jamie Spencer. Jamie just niggling away, yet Frankie's not moved a muscle in front. He's not doing a tap, Frankie, and Aldous Huxley just in hand. Frankie's not quickened the pace yet. He only quickened it up about 2.5 out, and that catches Lionel somewhat flat-footed. You can see they're all just being niggled now. Frankie's motionless. Natural World's looming up over on the far side, but he's going to empty fairly quickly. And now Jamie Spencer, he's all motion, all action here on Lionel, who wants to hang as well. Look at his head, putting his head to one side. He tends to hang when he's under pressure, but he still goes forward nonetheless. He's inexperienced still. It's only his third career start, so you can forgive him the hanging around and the head carriage, because he does knuckle down pretty well. Now Frankie's gone for it on Aldous Huxley. Still think he's going to win this race. Still looks like he's in charge, but Lionel comes home strongly enough. That 10th furlong doing it for him at 11.81, and he just gets there under Jamie Spencer to deny Frankie and Aldous Huxley, who was a little bit unlucky because he got everything his own way out in front, and he's just been run down by a horse I think's pretty good. And when he gets a real test of stamina, that's when we're going to see the best of Lionel. I don't think this race was run to suit him in any way whatsoever. He wants a strong gallop at 1.5 miles, and then you'll see a much better horse than we saw here. Outpaced there as they quickened. It did turn into a sprint, that's what the numbers tell us, but he did pick up and he did keep galloping all the way to the line, and he'd have kept going a bit longer, I venture to say, because I think he is a strong stayer, this fella, and there's going to be more to come. He's by Lope de Vega, out of a Galileo mare, trained by David Menuisier, and I think there's an awful lot more to come from him. Maybe the King Edward VII will be the place for him at Royal Ascot, where he would surely get a better gallop to go at, and he might be somewhat underestimated in the market for a big race like that. The Temple Stakes at Haydock Park on Saturday afternoon was their feature event on a very good card, and Winter Power was the 7-2 favourite. Last Crusade was 9-2, King's Lynn 5s, and Twilight Calls was in there at 5-1. It was 9-1 and bigger the rest for this sprint, and it was King's Lynn who prevailed here for the Andrew Balding team. He jumped out of stall number 2, and he's come home pretty strongly in this race. It was a tight finish, this. Twilight Calls finished second. He came out of stall 8. And the third home was Arecibo from the widest draw there. And early on, a bit of indecision from the jockeys. They split into a couple of groups. The near side group was led by Moss Gill, who wanted the stands rail. And the others, the principals in fact, stayed over on the far side. So you've got the winner, who's just tucked in there in the black cap. And you've got Twilight Calls next in the blue cap. And Arecibo was third. He came from over here. They do drift back together in the closing stages. And King's Lynn prevails. I don't think this is Group 1 sprinting form. This in itself was a Group 2, and if you were to ask me whether I thought any of these horses will cut it in Group 1 sprints, I wouldn't be too sure. We of course do have a Group 1 winner in here, in Winter Power, who took them along. She was favourite. She was disappointing again. It's 3 disappointing runs in a row from her. Here she is, and she'll drop away. She's in front there. She'll drop away quite tamely in the closing stages. That was a disappointing effort from her. The principals about to challenge over on the far side. King's Lynn about to get to the front with a big white face. Tracked through by Adam Kirby on Twilight Calls, who in fact quickens up quite well, a shade faster through the final 3 furlongs than King's Lynn, but just had a length or two to find and couldn't quite peg King's Lynn back. 104.12 was the finishing speed percentage. It wasn't not that strongly run a 5 furlong race really for a Group 2. 4th furlong was the best though, 11.09 from the winner King's Lynn, and that just about sealed the deal. I did like the way Arecibo ran. He's over towards the stand side. He likes a very strong gallop to go at. He likes Ascot as well. He'd have place prospects in something like the King's Stand, something like that, maybe a place prospect there, because he'll get a much better gallop to go at than he got here. You can see so many horses in contention in the closing stages, tells you a lot about the gallop. Look at Twilight Calls, just looking for a bit of room, looking for a split, blue cap, Cheveley Park colours. Then when he gets out, he does pick up really well, but it's all just a bit too late to reel in the winner. The last 3 furlongs, King's Lynn, 34.15, 34.14. For Twilight Calls, but just a little too much to do. And King's Lynn, who's a game and tough and genuine sort, ran really well at Chester last time up, clings on for his Group 2 success. The Twilight Calls, very strong traveller, who's best at 5 furlongs. He's an interesting horse, Twilight Calls, but he needs to be ridden for luck. A bit of a Soul Power, if you like. Needs to be dropped in and ridden for a bit of luck. Probably not as good as Soul Power. Be hard to be as good as that sprinter was. But nonetheless, it was a good sprint. Haydock, the Temple winner for the Andrew Balding yard. The Tattersall's Irish 2,000 guineas took place at the Curragh the weekend. It was over a mile, and Native Trail was 2-5 to get back in the winner's enclosure after his defeat in the English version. Buckaroo 3-1, 18's Ivy League, Wexford Native 25s and 28s, and bigger the rest. And it was Native Trail he found himself back in the winners' enclosure. He jumped out of 1. He beat New Energy, who came out of 7. And in third place, Imperial Fighter, who jumped out of stall number 9. They didn't go mad in this race. It wasn't a flat-out gallop, but they went a nice even pace, producing a reasonable final time, 1 minute 39.28. The 1,000 guineas run a day later. The car was a bit quicker. The winner coming home in 1:38.81, so about just under half a second quicker in the 1,000 guineas. This was a race where the pace just built from about halfway. I think it went quite steady until they'd turned into the home straight, and then it built from there. And Native Trail, he got a good posse through the race, a good sit on the rail, the shortest way round the bend, sat in there under William Buick. At this point, I think it's important to highlight the second. This is a really big run from this second horse, New Energy. Jumped out of stall 7, dropped out, given a chance, and loomed up going very well at the furlong pole. Native Trail, who's a strong stayer at a mile, was just too good. You just saw the trip out a little bit better than New Energy. He was a very interesting horse going forward. And I don't think the race was necessarily run to suit him. He's right out the back. He's at a positional disadvantage the way the race was run, but he gets himself into the race with consummate ease. Meanwhile, Native Trail's just going to try and find a little bit of running room in behind the leaders, and William Buick will just angle between horses there, just past the 3 pole. Now, people will say he's hitting a flat spot at this point. Well, we looked at his splits in the Guineas, we looked at his splits in the Craven Stakes, and I think we were able to decipher on previous verdicts that he doesn't really hit a flat spot. He just takes a stride or two to get organised, but generally, when people think he's hitting a flat spot, he's actually quickening. It's just a big horse who takes a while to get organised, perhaps takes a while to change his legs, but he doesn't necessarily hit a flat spot. But there, look at the runner-up, look how close he's got now. That's a very good run. Think how far back he was. He spotted Native Trail 6 or 7 lengths, and he's got to just about to his girth, but now Native Trail, this is where he's so good. He's very strong in the closing stages. This stiff mile suiting him better than the Rowley mile, where he was beaten by his stable companion in the 2,000 guineas. I think the stiff nature of this track played to his strengths, and that begs the question, what about the future for Native Trail? Well, the St James's Palace Stakes is an obvious target perhaps for him. He's entered in that for sure. But maybe 1.25 miles is the way to go with him now. Maybe the Eclipse would be the right race for him. They might swerve Royal Ascot perhaps. They've got so many good horses in the Appleby yard that they might just say, well, we'll give this horse a bit of a break and have a crack at the Eclipse. That might be where Charlie Appleby wants to go. And you should remember when we talk about him as well, that whilst he looks like he'll stay 1.25 miles, all of the sectionals that he's ever done in his life have shown him to be quite a fast horse, particularly in the Guineas, where he quickened up very well indeed. So he may just take a while to find his top stride, but he's not slow by any means. Got a horse looming up behind him on the bridle, looking for room, and he sees that horse off in the end quite readily. So he's not slow. We mustn't make that mistake. He's a top-class racehorse, and top-class racehorses are not slow. He can fire some fast sectionals, but it looks to me as if 10 furlongs is really, really going to suit him. And Charlie Appleby, 3 Guineas winners now to his name, the French version, English version, now the Irish version, under that man William Buick. His pursuit of the jockey's title are well underway. And perhaps we could highlight the Appleby numbers here. His strike rate in 2022 is an astonishing 35%, even better than the William Haggis strike rate that we quoted a little bit earlier on. So 35% for Charlie Appleby, and that's just not Mickey Mouse races either. That's in big races that he's winning, and he has got some talent in his yard at the moment. There he is, Native Trail, back in the winner's enclosure, and deservedly so. Well, that's it for the verdict this week. I hope you've enjoyed looking back at some of those races. There were plenty more that we could have put in, but time pressure means that we can't put all of the races that perhaps you would like in there. And I think we've perhaps seen a dark horse, a horse for the future, definitely for your racing TV trackers. I think he could be very good indeed. His name, Shining Blue. See you next week.